Hello, and welcome to another episode of Health Coach for Women. Today, I want to talk to you about a sensitive topic that needs to be talked about. I want to talk to you today about when love becomes toxic. Right? So, when you first meet someone, everything is all good, right? And they show you what they want you to see. They present the best part of themselves when you're first meeting them. And just as yourself, you want to be yourself. You should be yourself. You should always be yourself. And in the most part, people show the best of themselves. So in the beginning, when you first meet someone, there's that attraction, of course, and you enjoy each other's company. You have great conversation, and everything is good, right? And then we develop this connection, right? And where we feel more open, we feel more free, right? To some extent, when we decide to be in a relationship, and then maybe months or years or whatever later on down the line, things change, and you're wondering, "Oh, what happened? What happened? What happened to this person that I met in the beginning? What happened to this compassionate, loving person?" And so what happened is, as what happens over time. Now, first, let me just say, I'm not a relationship coach. I'm not an expert on loving relationships, right? But I can talk from the experiences I've had personally, as well as other people that I know and their experiences as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I wanted to say, what happens? We become complacent. And I guess because we're so used to that person that sometimes we get too comfortable, right? We get too comfortable and things happen, and sometimes in some relationships, you have people who want to think that they can change the other person into getting them to be who they would like them to be. Now I myself was never that type of person. I myself was, and still not that type of person. You can't change someone into who you would want, who you would like them to be. You have to accept them for who they are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so that's what it is to love unconditionally, taking and accepting the other person's flaws, because we all have flaws. We are all imperfect, and that's what it means to be human. So just what happens is, over time we become complacent, and 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 what I'm noticing and what I've learned is that people don't communicate effectively. So what are some of the things to communicate effectively? Well, the first thing is learning how to listen to the other person, learning how to listen without defending and speak without offending. Now, I think I've heard that saying, and I loved it, and I kept that saying. I didn't make that up. That came from what was his name? Montel Williams, when he had his talk show. I remember hearing that years ago when he had his show. Speak without offending and listen without defending. Now, I was one of those people who, you know, when I would speak, I feel like or if I'm listening to what the other person had to say, and I want to defend what they're saying because what they're saying is incorrect, right? But we have to learn how to effectively communicate, give the other person a chance to speak without interrupting them. So we need to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to listen. And so when you give them, you have to look at it from the other person's point of view, right? The other person's point of reference. Now, they can be saying something that's totally incorrect, right? Totally false. But in their mind, it's true to them. In their mind, it's true to them. So just allow the other person to speak, right? And then you will have your say. So the level of respect comes from the communication. So we have to, and it's not where one person is able to speak and say their piece. And then when the other person is speaking, now that person wants to just interrupt you and not give you a chance to speak. That is not effective communication. Effective communication is between two people, right? Between two or more people where one is speaking and what the other is listening. And so how you know when someone is listening to you, when they are able to repeat back, not verbatim, not in the exact words, to be able to repeat back to let you know they heard what you said. And that lets you know that, yes, they did hear you. And so with them being able to really hear what you are saying, it then brings that level of understanding if they can have that level of understanding with you without being offensive, without being defensive or offensive. Right. And so that's what that level of communication, effective communication comes from. Well, what do we know when we have these signs of trouble? Of course, as I mentioned, lack of communication, right? Rudeness, interrupting, that's being rude. I've done it, I've done it. So I'm admitting it, right? And so we have to learn to be respectful of the other person when they are speaking. Another thing is that lack of emotional support. Not being able to provide that emotional support to the other person. And so it works both ways, whether it's male or female. It works both ways. And one of the two troubling signs I would say is that emotional support as well as physical abuse. Okay. And so with those two things, um, there's definitely that sign of serious trouble, right? Serious trouble. And so that we can say, well, what happened? Right? What happened? Where was the disconnect? What went wrong? And we can't look at the other person. We have to first always look at ourselves with self-reflection. Looking at ourselves, what did I do? Let's go back, rewind. What did I do to make this person feel this way, to say or to do what they did? Right. So we always have to look at ourselves, and we have to be honest and truthful with ourselves to say, okay, I can see where such and such happened. I can understand why this person reacted this way. Because, of course, with every action, there is a reaction. Now, in some cases, it may not be justified, and you may have done everything correct. You may have done everything right. So when you know that you've done everything right, and but the other person is not connecting for them, then it is nothing, there's no bearing on your part. You've done what you needed to do. But we need to be honest and open with ourselves about that and how we communicate, right? So, but what happens when we lose that level of respect? We become resentful, right? When we become complacent and resentful, lose the respect, we're disrespectful, and we're no longer putting value on the other person. We no longer see value of that other person. And in turn, they may not see the value of you as well. So when we have this level of lack of communication, I should say, how can we rebuild that? How can we fix that? Right. So first you got to have the conversation. If you don't have the conversation, then that it's pointless, because you have to be able to sit and have a conversation. That's important. You have to also learn how to develop, to regain that trust with the other person, to regain that trust. And so how we do that, how we regain that trust, is having the open communication, giving them a chance to redeem themselves, right? Um, as far as being rude, and because remember, again, we're imperfect, we're not perfect human beings, right? So giving that person a chance to prove what they say they feel, what they say they feel for you. So if they love you, love isn't supposed to hurt, right? So if they love you, they will work towards improving themselves, just like you would work towards improving yourself on the areas where you know that needs working on. And that's what that personal development comes from, evolving, growing, and accepting, seeing your flaws and accepting your own flaws and working towards improving those flaws. So once we are able to do that, hopefully you can be able to develop trust again. And it's just like a couple and, the husband cheated or someone cheated in a relationship. I'm not just going to put it on the men. And someone cheated in a relationship. And so now you have to develop that trust again. You have to be able to trust them again and have and hope and believe that they will do the right thing by you. So if some people say, hey, once a cheater, always a cheater. You know, um, I don't have a statement on that, whether, I find that to be true or whatever. I don't know. It's possible, maybe it's not. There's people who, stepped outside the marriage and they rebuilt their relationship and they're still together today. So but what the point of what I'm trying to make is that you have to have that level of communication and it has to be rebuilt. And the foundation of that is not only trust and a level of respect, because those are extremely important. Having that level of respect and trust, and honesty, being able to communicate. Oh, you have to have that. If you don't have it, that's the foundation. If you don't have it, then you really have nothing. When you're planting a flower, it takes not only water, but also sunlight, right? Not only water and sunlight, but it takes the right soil. The minerals and nutrients in the soil must be right for the seed to grow and to blossom into this beautiful flower. So that's the point of what I'm trying to make. You have to have the foundation in place and you have to have a strong foundation. And without that, it will crumble. Without that strong foundation, it will crumble. And so how do we know when it's time to let go? What if only one person is acknowledging, the things that needs to be worked on and the other one doesn't? The other one doesn't see their the things that they need to work on with themselves. Well, if the other person don't see it, all you can do is do because you can never change another person. You can never change another person. The only person you can change is yourself. That is the only thing you can change. So changing someone, trying to think that you can, do this for a person, and once they do this, they'll change, and once they see this, they'll change. That person, then that individual need to come to a level of awareness and to be wanting to change for themselves. So there's nothing you can do about that. And so if you see that if you are growing and developing as a person and you are doing everything you can on your end to make progress, to make change, to make it a harmonious relationship, and the other is not, then you really need to take the time to really, again, reflect and decide what is the best course of action for you in your life and what's needed for you, because there is no excuse for physical abuse. There's no excuse for that. I don't care how angry a person is. Another person doesn't have the right, whether it's a male or female, to physically abuse another person. All right. There is no justification and no excuse for that. And so with that being said, of course, you have to come to your own decision on what you feel you need to do. And it's so unfortunate that people stay in these abusive relationships, knowing that it's not good, knowing that it's unhealthy, knowing that it can also be fatal, possibly fatal, you know, and I can speak from my own experience, when I was younger, being in an abusive relationship, And I stayed because he was my first love and everything like that. And I felt like I was so attached, that I was able to see what was happening, but I didn't want to accept what was happening. But I stayed anyway, even though what was happening was painful, was not real love as I thought. Now, when you first meet somebody and your first love, you always have that feeling like, oh, you're on cloud nine, and you feel like, oh, nothing, I just feel so great and everything is wonderful and beautiful. And then you wake up and realize that the person who you thought you knew is not who they really are, or it is really who they are, but it's not what you thought they would be. That's what I wanted to say. And so, with that being said, you have to gather up the strength, although it may be painful, although it may hurt, and you feel that attachment, and you feel, you feel like you feel like a bit of secure or you insecure, or you feel that loneliness, you don't want to be alone. Well, the best thing that you can do is to take that time to be alone. And so I know it's a tough decision. It was something I had to do for myself also, when I was younger, So, and in my past relationships. But you have to gather that strength for your own well-being, to make a decision and decide that it's time to let go. It's time to move on. And sometimes we don't want to let go. We don't want to move on simply because we are expecting a different outcome. We're hoping that that person would change. Or you feel like, oh no, I can change him. If I just do this, I'll change him. No, you won't. You think you will. No, you won't. That person has to be ready to change. You won't change a thing. Okay. And you don't want to feel like you're a failure. You don't want to feel that shame or embarrassment. Oh, look, my marriage failed, or my 10-year relationship has failed, or whatever. So you rather stay in it, in an unhappy relationship, just to save face or whatever, or because you feel like, I love him. You always want to say, well, I love him. Well, does he love you back? Or does she love you back? You know, does that other person love you back in return? So what is love? Love is unconditional. Love is kind. Love is peace. Love is unconditional to a point where you can accept that person for who they are, even with their flaws, you can accept that person. So, what I'm saying, I am not saying to accept their reckless behavior as far as rudeness, being disrespectful, emotionally abusive, and physically abusive. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the little things that we dislike about a person, you know, little silly things that you may dislike about that individual. It's like, oh, he always leaves the toilet seat up. I'm tired of falling in the toilet seat. Those are little things, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, being able to accept those minor flaws like that, or maybe when he brushes his teeth, he leaves the toothpaste all over the mirror or something like that. Just little things. The main thing of what I'm talking about, when you need to know that you need to let go, is when you are feeling unhappy and you are feeling like this is not acceptable under any circumstances. It's not acceptable. There is no excuse for physical abuse. There is no excuse for emotional abuse or emotional neglect. There is no excuse for that. Okay. Again, all we can do is work on ourselves towards improving who we are as a person. We cannot change the other person. That person has to be willing to change for themselves. So I wanted to bring this message out here today because so many people are, like I said, going through some tough times, and with the economy, the pandemic, and everything like that, and with finances or whatever, and in their relationships. And one thing does impact the other, whether you realize it or not. One thing affects the other. So you want to have a better relationship. with your spouse, your mate, uh, first always start with self. Always begin with self, because it could be where it's not the other person, it could be where it's you. Again, I'm not I'm excluding that part out of the abuse part. There's no excuse for that. I don't care how angry you get, there's no justification for someone else putting their hands on you for any reason whatsoever. Uh, if it's that bad, then, and if another person brings you to that point of where you need to be physical, well, then maybe it's time to move forward. Maybe it's time to move on, let go and move on. And it's the hardest thing that, you can do, because you strive to build something, and it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. And sometimes in life, that's what happens. Sometimes that's what happens in life. It doesn't always work out the way that we want it to. But again, we do our best. We do our best to do what we can with what we know. And I just wanted to talk today about that and to discuss that. You don't have to stay in an unhealthy, unhappy relationship. And I know it's easier said than done, especially when you have small children and maybe your spouse is the breadwinner, or and you really have uh, a strong connection with this person, and you feel like you really love them. So, no, I'm not saying everybody has to know what is the best thing for them to do. But if someone is making threats against you, saying things like, I don't take threats lightly. If someone is saying they're going to kill you or something like that, you have to kind of really reevaluate some things. So, with that being said, that's all I had to say for today on this episode. And I hope that you benefited in some way. If you haven't already, click the like button. Go ahead and click the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. If you are looking to really want something better for 2021, you can connect with me at healthcoachforwomen.com. I'm on Facebook. No, I have Facebook, but I don't use Facebook as much. So take that back. But you can definitely connect with me on Instagram, Marsha_Roopchand_Walker, and connect with me here. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening in. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now.